Shadows of Trick or Treat, a nightmarish encounter on Halloween. It was a chilly Halloween night, and the air crackled with the anticipation of trick-or-treating. My friends and I, a group of 13 to 14-year-olds, were determined to make this year's Halloween unforgettable. This marked our second year venturing out without parental supervision, and we had meticulously planned our route to hit the houses rumored to offer full-sized candy bars. Our journey led us to a recently developed street adorned with opulent houses. Excitement bubbled within us as we set off for my house. The night commenced on a high note, with a few additional candy stops along the way. As we turned down the sidewalk leading to the new street, an uncanny quietness blanketed the area. To our surprise, we were the sole souls venturing into this mysterious terrain. The first house on the new street welcomed us warmly, an amiable older man distributing full-sized Hershey's chocolate bars to each of us. Our excitement soared, and a wave of enthusiasm propelled us forward. However, as we approached subsequent houses, a disconcerting pattern unfolded: silence. 10 houses stood eerily unresponsive, casting a foreboding shadow over our Halloween escapade. Undeterred, we redirected our attention to the largest house at the end of the street. Its grandeur promised a Halloween jackpot. The long driveway led to a colossal circular space, and as we approached, I caught a fleeting glimpse of a woman peering at us from a small window beside the door. She hastily retreated as our eyes met, but I dismissed it, assuming she was merely awaiting trick-or-treaters. Upon ringing the doorbell, a woman swung the door open, accompanied by the same older woman I had glimpsed in the window. Their smiles reassured us as we uttered our customary trick-or-treat. The door swung open wider, revealing a room adorned with a vast round table laden with an extravagant array of candies. It was a Halloween dream come true. Invited inside to choose 2 candies each, we couldn't believe our luck. The room exuded an enchanting aroma of confectionery delights, and our eyes widened at the sight before us. However, as I deliberated over my second choice, the door suddenly slammed shut. Panic gripped us. The woman by the door requested a moment to fetch dessert, leaving us bewildered. The other woman had vanished as well. As seconds ticked by, an unsettling silence permeated the air. Footsteps echoed down the hall, growing louder with each passing moment. My instincts screamed danger. Without a moment's hesitation, I flung the door open, urging my friends outside just as the woman called out for us to wait. Running down the driveway, we didn't stop until we reached the safety of my house. Seated on my driveway, a palpable sense of terror and confusion lingered. We contemplated sharing our harrowing encounter with my parents, but the fear of admonishment for disregarding the cardinal rule, never enter a stranger's home, silenced us. Instead, we chose to keep the unnerving tale to ourselves, opting to continue our cautious trick-or-treating in my neighborhood. To this day, the enigma of those women continues to haunt our Halloween memories. We engage in animated discussions, speculating about their intentions and pondering what might have transpired had we stayed for dessert. The unnerving episode remains etched in our collective memory, a chilling reminder of a night that could have taken a far more sinister turn. Masked Intrusion, a terrifying Halloween encounter. Last year marked a significant transition in my life, the first time I inhabited a house completely alone. Having recently rented a modest dwelling in a new neighborhood closer to my workplace, my early days in October were quiet, with most neighbors keeping to themselves. The routine was mundane, yet the atmosphere was seemingly normal for the initial weeks. As Halloween drew near, I couldn't help but notice the lack of festive fervor in the neighborhood. Only a couple of houses adorned themselves with minimal decorations, a few pumpkins, some signs, but it was more than what the other houses bothered to display. Determined to embrace the spirit of the season, I decided to contribute by putting up a small trick-or-treat sign on my door. I bought a modest bag of candies, a departure from my previous habit of purchasing 3 or 4 large bags. The sense I gathered from the neighborhood was that Halloween wasn't a grand celebration here, so I thought 1 bag would suffice. As the afternoon unfolded on Halloween Day, a few small groups of kids made their way to my door, but that was about it. The joy of Halloween, even if it only involved handing out treats, felt somewhat diminished. By 10 p.m., I put the remaining candies in the pantry, and I settled on the couch to watch a scary movie, hoping to conclude the night on a thrilling note. The movie was about halfway through when, unexpectedly, the doorbell rang. Confused and slightly annoyed, I rose to answer it, peering through the peephole to identify the visitor. A small boy, around 10 or 11, stood at my door in a homemade costume, black cloth with red accents and a black mask. My initial surprise was coupled with concern. It was almost 11 p.m., and I worried that the child was alone, going door to door. Nevertheless, I opened the door, and he eagerly uttered the words trick or treat. Wishing not to disappoint the young trick or treater, I smiled and told him to wait a minute while I retrieved more candy from the pantry. After grabbing a handful, I returned to the door and dropped the candies into the boy's pillowcase. However, as he turned to leave, I couldn't help but notice that he was alone. I glanced around, expecting to see parents or friends on the sidewalk, but there was no one in sight. Closing the door, I felt a subtle unease settling in. A few minutes later, the doorbell rang again, and to my surprise, it was the same kid, this time without a pillowcase or bag. Perplexed and concerned, I asked if he was okay, receiving only silence in response. Looking behind him, I noticed someone in my neighbor's driveway across the street, a full-grown man wearing a similar costume to the child's. The boy claimed he was his father, but something about the situation felt off. Despite my growing unease, I extended the bag of candy for him to take. To my surprise, he looked almost annoyed before reluctantly grabbing a single piece and running off into the night. The entire encounter left me unsettled, prompting me to ensure my door was securely locked. Returning to the couch, I resumed watching the movie. As the night wore on, around 11:30 p.m., I decided it was time to get ready for bed. However, as I ascended the stairs, a flash of light from outside caught my eye. Nervously, I approached the window to investigate, only to realize that the motion sensor lights near my garage had been triggered. I stood by the window, scanning the surroundings for a few minutes, growing increasingly uneasy. Eventually, I closed the blinds and proceeded upstairs to my bedroom. Lying in bed, I couldn't shake the memory of the strange boy from earlier. The night seemed to have taken on an eerie quality. Just as I began drifting into sleep, a soft ruffling noise reached my ears, followed by loud thumping bangs on my front door. Startled, I shot up, jumped out of bed, and quietly made my way downstairs. As I approached the front door, 3 more loud bangs shook it, causing me to jump back in fear. Waiting for a moment, I finally summoned the courage to peer through the peephole. To my horror, it was the man I had seen across the street earlier, the one the boy had claimed was his father. Standing mere inches from my door, he still wore the unsettling black and red costume, his face concealed by the mask. In his hand, something unknown glinted ominously. There was no way I would open that door. Fear coursed through me, and I ran back upstairs to grab my phone, locking myself in my bedroom. I dialed 911, and the man continued banging on the door for what felt like an eternity. As I waited in terror, hoping he had left, the sudden sound of glass shattering reached my ears, seemingly emanating from the kitchen downstairs. Completely terrified at this point, with no means to defend myself if the intruder made his way upstairs, I waited for the police to arrive. Just moments later, I heard the wailing sirens of approaching police cars, followed by hurried footsteps outside my door. It was a mix of relief and anxiety as I waited for the police to call me downstairs before unlocking the door for them. Upon searching the house, they discovered a broken window in my kitchen, the point of entry for the intruder. I decided to stay at a hotel for the next few days, prioritizing safety. Strangely, nothing was stolen, leaving me to ponder the man's true intentions in breaking into my house. As the months passed, I often revisited that fateful night in my mind, questioning if the child was a pawn in some sinister plan. With the approaching Halloween, nearly a year later, a sense of paranoia gripped me. The fear that the man from last year might return to finish what he started haunted my thoughts, casting a pall over the upcoming festivities. Harvesting Shadows, a Halloween tale of the Scarecrow's gaze. When I was but a child, dwelling in our snug neighborhood, Halloween held an unconventional allure for my family. Although the streets weren't bustling with the merriment of trick-or-treating, my father and I shared a peculiar fondness for exploring the abandoned and the eerie. It was a curious inclination, one that I wouldn't dare entertain alone or with friends, yet with my father's presence, the thrill seemed tempered by a sense of safety and companionship. However, the equilibrium of comfort and curiosity would be disrupted on this fateful day. On this particular Halloween, after cruising around for an indeterminate amount of time, our wanderlust led us to a dilapidated barn. Time had not been kind to this structure, the siding hung in tatters, and the roof sagged under the burden of years of neglect. The once vibrant red hue had dulled, revealing only faint echoes beneath layers of grime. Unfazed, we navigated the treacherous terrain around shards of broken glass and remnants of shattered wood, stumbling upon forgotten tools and discarded debris. Amidst the wreckage, a small scarecrow caught my eye. Gesturing towards it, I and my father ventured closer, oblivious to the growing stench that lingered in the air. "Poor guy," my father muttered as we approached. My gaze shifted downward, only to discover a lifeless raccoon sprawled not far from the scarecrow's perch. Intrigued, I asked my father what might have meted out such a fate. He examined the raccoon, his response concealed by the oddity of the scene that unfolded before us. I followed his gaze back to the scarecrow. It was then that a disconcerting chill ran down my spine. The scarecrow, once seemingly indifferent to our presence, now fixed its gaze squarely on me. The eyes, once staring into the distance, had shifted, maintaining their semblance of a smile but conveying an unsettling awareness. My heart raced, and a sense of foreboding enveloped me. "Dad?" I called out, receiving no response. My father remained silent, pointing at the raccoon with a look of growing repulsion. That's when I saw it. The raccoon's insides were missing, yet there was no gruesome mess. It was an eerie subtlety that left me unsettled. Summoning courage, I glanced back at the scarecrow. My unease deepened as I realized it was still staring at me, its once raised eyebrows now furrowed, the smile wiped away. Bloodstains had emerged, seeping through its ragged clothes. A wave of sickness overcame me, and dizziness threatened to pull me under until my father's hand landed reassuringly on my shoulder. "Probably just a coyote," he assured, leading the way out. His words provided solace, yet doubt lingered in my mind. As we distanced ourselves from the barn, I stole a final glance at the scarecrow. To my surprise, it reverted to its initial pose, gazing into the distance with a high-spirited smile. I chose not to disclose my unsettling encounter to my father. Uncertain if what I saw was real, I didn't want him to worry about my perceptions and jeopardize our shared adventures. Days passed, and my father, accompanied by my brother, revisited the barn to sketch its dilapidated charm. When he returned and shared the pictures, a shiver ran down my spine. The scarecrow, the source of my unease, was conspicuously absent from the images. The barn stood as it should, a haunting reminder that some mysteries are best left undisturbed, hidden in the shadows of Halloween memories. The enigma lingered, casting its web over the fields of our shared memories, weaving tales that blurred the line between the supernatural and the mundane.